Blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is on the law of the Lord, and on his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Welcome to the Bread of the Word podcast, a podcast striving to feast on God's Word and let the Bible speak to us all. Let us, as a former generation said, go ad fontes, to the fountain, and be nourished and sustained by all that God is. Let's dig in together. Hello and welcome back to the Bread of the Word podcast, where we go ad fontes, to the fountain, to the Word of God, to be nourished and sustained by all that God is, as He's revealed Himself to us. My name's Tyler, and we will be taking a brief pause from the book of Job to work through a text that has ministered to me in the last few days. I have been wrestling with a bit of insomnia. That's something that I struggle with from time to time. It's part of an autism thing for me. And so there are times where, simply put, my body wants to rest and my brain does not. And there have been a few days this week where that has been how the night goes, is my brain is loud and my body longs to be still. And the other night was particularly rough, and I just flat out did not sleep until somewhere after midnight, which is really late for me. My brain didn't relent until reciting this passage of scripture until the point of exhaustion. Psalm 23 is a passage that many of us who grew up in Christianity are very familiar with. Many of us could probably quote that from memory, simply because it used to be so baked into Christian culture that Psalm 23 was just everywhere. It was read at funerals, it was in sermon after sermon after sermon, and it's become kind of built into that culture. And Psalm 23, it's not going to be new to anybody here. This isn't like I've dug into the Bible and found some obscure passage to bolster my ego and make myself sound important. No, we're coming back to base. We're back to square one here. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. These are the words of God. This is the psalm of Tyler the Insomniac. This is the psalm that has grounded me this week, as I have struggled to rest, because it is God who gives rest. It's a beginning with first line. The Lord is my shepherd. That is the relationship that God has with his people, as one of sheep and of shepherd. We're told in Psalm 100 that we are the sheep of his pasture. Shepherd language is throughout the Old Testament, and even it's the New Testament when Christ refers to himself as the good shepherd. When Jesus takes on that metaphor that is throughout the Old Testament. Because Moses was a shepherd, Abraham was a shepherd, the prophet Amos was a shepherd, David was a shepherd. For reasons we don't always fully understand. Shepherds have lined the story of God like feathers on a goose. They're everywhere. And so often when God speaks of something tender, something deep, something profound, somewhere in there there's shepherd language. It's unexplainable sometimes. But the Lord is my shepherd, says David. He is the shepherd of me. And because of that, he says, I shall not want. That I shall not be in a state of wanting good from the shepherd. That the shepherd is competent in meeting the needs of the sheep. And he does this how? Why? By making them to lie down in green pastures, by leading them beside still waters, by restoring their soul, by leading them in the paths of righteousness. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, that he maketh me to rest. But not only that, he maketh me to rest in plentiful environments, in places with nourishment, in places with sustenance. And he leadeth me beside the still waters. The shepherd is involved. The shepherd is tender. The shepherd he's not delegating these responsibilities to somebody else. The shepherd is doing all this. God is the shepherd, and we are his sheep. There's not a middleman here. There's not a mediator that's in the middle between the shepherd and the sheep, but it is God who leads us to the still waters. It is God who makes us to lie down in green pastures. It is God who restores my soul. And I didn't realize this until I was reading an article about this from a professor in my area, that restoring my soul, that is still shepherd language when you look at it in Hebrew. I'm not fluent in Hebrew. I know a little bit of vocabulary. But he put it this way, and he said that it is easy to think that perhaps David has shifted his gaze here from the sheep to the person, but the following phrases also refer to the flock and the shepherd's leaving us to ponder the connection of this clause with those that precede and with those that follow. It is the good shepherd, then, who, in restoring our souls, binds up our wounds, heals our sickness, and gives us strength in place of weakness. So he restoreth my soul in that way. That it is God who heals, it is God who binds up, it is God who refreshes. If we look at Psalm chapter 3, we find a similar statement from David in adverse conditions. He starts off that psalm saying, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be, which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter up of mine head. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. I laid down and slept. I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. It was God who gave him rest. That is a constant theme throughout the Old Testament, is that it is God who gives us rest. It is God who gives us peace. When Solomon came into his kingship in 1 Kings, the exact phrasing is that God had given his people rest from their enemies. And so God restores our soul. He binds up our wounds. He treats our infirmities. He gives us strength when we are weak. And in doing so, he leads us in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. That is to say, that it is in consistency with his character. That God is a good shepherd because he's good. Therefore, David says that though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that is to say, that I walk through the darkest of darks, the hardest of hard things, when I am at my absolute lowest, when I am at my weakest, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The shepherd's staff and his rod served two functions. One was to guide the sheep, and one was to drive off attackers. And he would guide the sheep, sometimes a little more forcefully than other times. But he had a staff to guide, and he had a rod to drive off the wolves. It was a picture of his protection for the sheep, of his competence as a shepherd, that he watches over the flock. This is why pastors are likened to being shepherds so much in the New Testament. It says in Hebrews that they watch over our souls, that they are to be shepherds as Christ embodied being a shepherd, that they are to be good shepherds imitating the good shepherd. And by the good shepherd we are comforted by his competence. We are comforted by his competence to protect, by his competence to defend, and his competence to uphold us. Verse 5, thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. He prepares a table before us, he says, in the presence of enemies. The enemies are still here, but it's okay. Why? Because the comfort of the shepherd is here. Because the shepherd is meeting our needs, so that the enemies are here, but it's okay. That there is comfort, there is joy, there is peace that we can find in the midst of our enemies. And such is the language of the Psalms. If we go back to Psalm 3 even, I lay down and slept, and I awaked before the Lord sustained me. Following verse, I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. Though I am surrounded by 10,000 people, the Lord is with me. The Lord gives me peace. The Lord gives me rest. You get into the Psalms, even deeper into the Psalms, you find some of the battle songs that David writes. And it's not just that David is praying to the Lord as a shepherd, but he's also one who equips us. That the shepherd gives us strength. Psalm 133, I believe it is. Not 133, but somewhere in there. I can't remember where exactly it is right now, but he trains my hands for war and my fingers to fight. Psalm 46, he says that God is my refuge and my strength. And one of those statements is defensive, and one of those statements is offensive. That God is not just the hiding place, but he's also that which drives us forwards to meet the enemy, because he's prepared a table before us in the midst of the enemies. And he anoints our heads with oil. Why? Because we are his. Because we are one with Christ, who bears all of these marks. That Christ, the anointed Son, is ours, and we are his. And just as we are united in his life, we are united in his death, we are united in his resurrection. Which means all these things first can be said about Christ, but can also be said about us, because of what God is doing within us. And so he anoints my head with oil because I belong to him. An outward sign of my belonging to God is this. Verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Despite the fact that my enemies are present, despite the fact that he has prepared a table before me in the presence of my enemies. It says, only goodness and mercy shall follow me. Surely goodness and mercy shall pursue me throughout my life. Though I am restless, though my mind is unquiet, goodness and mercy are following me. God's goodness and his mercy, the Hebrew is hesed, which, to use the proper dialect, would have a little more in it, but the word essentially translates to his covenant faithfulness, to a kind of goodness that flows out of a covenant, out of a contract that God made. This is in consistency with his character, that God is a God of covenant. He is a God of faithfulness. And so goodness and mercy follow because of God's covenant with his people, that we are the sheep of his pasture. We are his. He made us, not the other way around. We are his. We are bound to him because we are his sheep. And so the reason that the Lord continues to be my shepherd, the reason that the Lord leads me beside the still waters and causes me to lie down in green pastures, the reason the shepherd restores my soul is not because I'm that impressive, it's not because I am this great person, but because God is a God who keeps covenant. God is a God of faithfulness, even when I am weak, even when I am tired, even when I am low. God is faithful. So surely we can be assured of this, that goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That where he is, that where I am, he will also be. That is why Jesus ascended. He said, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may also be. That the presence of God would follow us. That we would live before the face of God. We may not see the face of God in this day, but just as the enemies are present, so is our God, so is our shepherd. That we do not tread anywhere. We do not tread any ground without the shepherd before and behind us. God is our pillar of fire by day, or by night, and our pillar of cloud by day. Christ is our Moses leading us into the promised land. He does all that. This is our shepherd. If we look over at John 10, for further clarity on what that truly means, Jesus says, the sheep hear his voice, and he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. And when he put forth his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger will they not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers. This parable spoke Jesus unto them, but they understood not what things they were, which he spake unto them. Then said Jesus unto them again, I say unto you, verily, verily, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear him. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and he shall go in and out and find pasture. The thief cometh not, but for to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. I am come, that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Verse 11, I am the good shepherd, changing illustrations, but keeping the same metaphor. Because I'm the door, by which you enter into the pasture, but I'm also the shepherd leading you in. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. But he that is an hireling, and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth. And the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. The hireling fleeth, because he is a hireling, and careth not for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life, that I might take it up again. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father. And so Jesus is the shepherd leading us into pasture. He is the shepherd that brought sheep from other pastures, the outsiders, the Gentiles, the eunuchs, the Ninevites, if you will, hearkening to Jonah. The outsiders were brought in, that there was one fold and one shepherd. There is one good shepherd, who leadeth us beside the still waters, who maketh us to lie down in green pastures. And there is one shepherd which restoreth our souls. And Jesus is the shepherd of Psalm 23. At the end of Ecclesiastes, Solomon says that the words of the wise are as goads, or as nails firmly fixed. And he says they are given by one shepherd. These sayings are true, for they come from the mouth of God. God is our shepherd. We shall not want. We shall lie down and sleep, and we will arise, because the Lord sustains us. The Lord gives us rest. The Lord gives us peace. The Lord gives us strength when we have none for ourselves. Thank you for listening. This has been the Bread of the Word podcast. Bread of the Word is a podcast ministry striving to feed people the wonderful words of God, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse, striving to let the Word speak for itself. This ministry is also a member of the Truth and Love Network, a diverse fellowship of fellow podcasts of different theological backgrounds, united in the gospel of God. For more from the Bread of the Word podcast or the Truth and Love Network, check out the links below and follow us on social media. Until next time, God bless. Matthew 4:4.